Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into the weeds on a specific role in Toastmasters, the sergeant at arms. Now, maybe your first thought about the sergeant at arms is, they set up the room, maybe quiet the phones down. Seems pretty straightforward, maybe a bit behind the scenes. But looking through the articles and guides you sent over, it really seems like there's way more to it, like a surprising amount of depth, maybe? So our mission here is to kind of peel back those layers using these sources and figure out what the Sergeant at Arms really does, the challenges, and why this role is actually so important for the whole club.
It really is. And, it's often those roles that look purely logistical on the surface. They're actually foundational. The sources really drive this home, that a good meeting environment, that positive feeling, it doesn't just happen. It takes work. And a lot of that work, it lands squarely on the Sergeant at Arms. It's definitely more than just unlocking a door.
Okay, right. So let's unpack that. You start with the common idea setup, gavel, phones. Doesn't exactly scream major leadership challenge, does it?
No, it doesn't. And that's exactly what these sources push back against, right away. One writer, clearly experienced in the role, calls it a challenging role and says it needs more than you'd think just looking at it. And the official definition from the club constitution backs that up. It talks about managing club property, yes, and prepping the room, but also hospitality and chairing the social and reception committee. So even formally, it's broader than just tables and chairs.
Okay, hospitality. Here's where it gets really interesting then. How do those practical tasks, like setting up, actually tie into the big picture, the Toastmasters mission?
Yeah, this is the crucial link the sources make. Everything the SAA does or should do connects back to that core mission, which is providing that supportive, positive learning place where people can build their communication leadership skills, gain confidence. So think about it. If the room's chaotic, or the projector doesn't work, or if a guest feels lost and ignored.
Right, that immediately kills the vibe. The supportive and positive part goes out the window.
Exactly. So the SAA, by preparing the space, making sure things work, welcoming people, they're literally creating the foundation for that supportive environment. They set the stage for the learning and growth to happen.
That makes sense. It's environment creation, not just tasks. So let's get specific. What does this look like day to day or meeting to meeting? The sources break it down pretty logically.
They do. They use categories like before the meeting, upon arrival, during, after, and then stuff outside the meeting and on the executive committee.
Okay, so starting before the meeting, what's on the checklist?
Right, before. First, confirming the room booking a few days ahead. Simple, but you don't want surprises. Making sure there are plenty of blank ballots for best speaker, evaluator, all that. And one article really stressed this. Connecting with the president right before the meeting. Giving like a 1-minute warning.
A 1-minute warning. Why is it so important?
To make sure the meeting starts exactly on time. It sets a professional tone right from the get-go. It's those little details. Gotcha. Okay, so that's before. What about upon arrival? Sounds like they need to be early birds.
Definitely. At least 30 minutes early is the recommendation. That gives them time to physically arrange the room tables, chairs, the lectern, club banner, timing device, gavel, all the physical property, plus setting out materials like ballots, maybe trophies or ribbons. Oh, and sometimes the flag. And then there's the welcome area, usually near the door. Setting up promotional stuff, name tags, the guest book item 84, specifically mentioned maybe some educational materials too.
So a lot of physical setup. Anything else on arrival?
Yeah, checking the room temperature, making sure it's comfortable. And then crucially, the guest welcome. They're often the first face a guest sees. So welcoming them, getting them a name tag, asking them to sign the guest book. And the articles add a modern twist. Being ready for tech issues, especially in hybrid meetings, helping people connect, ensuring audio works both ways, reminding about mute buttons.
The joys of hybrid. So they might need to know how that tech works, or even practice beforehand. Exactly. Proactive troubleshooting. They're really setting the whole atmosphere, tech included, before the president even picks up the gavel.
Okay, makes sense. So what about during the meeting itself? What's the SAA doing then?
During, they often sit near the door. This lets them greet any latecomers quietly and help them find a seat without disrupting things too much. They might need to run small errands, maybe coordinate coffee or snacks, if that's happening. And a key function, collecting the ballots and tallying the votes for the awards.
And for online meetings, is it similar?
Pretty much, yeah. Welcoming late arrivals might just be a quick private message in the chat, less disruptive.
Right. Okay, so the meeting wraps up. What happens after?
After, it's basically clean up and reset. Returning the room to how they found it, packing up all the club's materials, the banner, gavel supplies, and storing them safely. tidying up any trash left behind. One article had a nice line. Try to leave it better than you found it for in-person.
Good principle. And online.
For online, it's more about formally ending the meeting platform. Maybe sending out the recording if the club does that.
Okay, so that covers the meeting cycle. But you mentioned responsibilities outside the meeting, too.
Yeah, it's not just a once-a-week job. Outside the club meeting, the SAA handles scheduling the location itself long-term,
Yeah.
maintaining the club's equipment, making sure the timer works, the banner's in good shape, keeping supplies stocked up so they don't run out of ballots or name tags. They also attend the executive committee meetings. That's important.
Right, they're part of the leadership team.
Exactly. And they need to plan ahead. If they can't make a meeting, they have to arrange a substitute or get help if needed. And a really key leadership bit, preparing their successor, training the next SAA.
Passing the torch. Okay, and you mentioned the executive committee specifically. What's their role there?
On the exec committee, they're the expert on the meeting space. They keep everyone updated on its status cost, availability, any issues. They work with a VP Education and VP Public Relations if extra space or different setups are needed for things like speech contests or special events. Remember that social and reception committee? They chair that. And they liaise with the secretary and treasurer if club property needs replacing or new supplies need ordering.
Wow, okay. When you list it all out like that, it's clear this is way more than just grunt work. It's managing a core piece of the club's operations. And you mentioned earlier that article making a really strong claim about the SAA's impact on guests.
Yes. That point really stood out. The quote was something like, the SAA can make the difference as to whether a new guest returns for the next meeting or is never seen again.
That's huge. Basically, the first impression rests heavily on them.
Absolutely. That initial welcome, the feeling of the room, how smoothly things seem to run the SAA shapes that first experience. So their actions with guests are critical. Working with the VP membership, VPM, to make sure guest contact info is captured for follow-up. Actively encouraging members to chat with guests, not just leave them standing alone, kind of breaking the ice. For online guests, it means proactively sending that private message, getting their details, and passing them on quickly to the officers, and just, being aware. As guests leave, saying something welcoming like, hope to see you again, or great having you, and double-checking before the meeting ends that the president and VPM actually have that guest contact info. Timeliness matters for follow-up.
So it's not just opening the door. It's actively pulling people in and making sure they don't fall through the cracks. That's real hospitality.
Exactly. It fulfills that part of the formal definition. And the sources really stress the mindset needed here. It's not just about ticking boxes. The article pushes for being proactive. Don't just get by. The advice is to constantly look for ways to make every meeting just a little better.
Be proactive. Anticipate needs.
Right. And that adaptability is crucial, especially now. The sources mention, the shift to Zoom and hybrid meetings. That brings new challenges, potential tech glitches, making sure everyone feels included. If you're not comfortable with the hybrid setup, the advice is clear. Practice beforehand. Don't wait for meeting night to figure it out.
That makes sense. Anticipate and prepare. It sounds like a demanding role, honestly. Are there resources to help someone starting out?
Oh, definitely. They don't just throw you in the deep end. The sources list several key things. Attending district training for club officers is highly recommended. Reading the Club Leadership Handbook, the Distinguished Club Program Guide, those are essential. Meeting with the person who did the job before you, the outgoing SAA, is huge. And meeting with the whole outgoing executive committee, too, to get the bigger picture.
Getting that handover is key.
Totally. And then meeting with the current exec committee to understand this year's club success plan and budget. Also, introducing yourself to whoever manages the meeting venue, building that relationship. And finally, recognizing it's a lot of work. The sources suggest asking for help. Get volunteers to assist with setup or specific tasks if you need to. Delegate.
That's good advice. Don't try to be a hero. Okay, so we've talked about the club benefits, the guest impact. What about the person doing the job? What's in it for the SAA themselves?
Yeah, the personal growth angle. This comes through strongly, too. It's not just service, it's development. The sources say that by doing this role, you seriously improve your organizational skills. You learn what it takes to create a successful meeting environment. You practice delegation, like we just mentioned. And you become much more detail-oriented, because you have to be.
That's really interesting. So a role that looks maybe a bit basic from the outside is actually a training ground for some pretty valuable management and leadership skills you can use anywhere.
Precisely. It's practical, hands-on experience in making things run smoothly, managing resources, and paying attention to the details that matter.
Okay, so What does this all mean, then? We started off thinking Sergeant-at-Arms equals room setup guy. Maybe gavel duty, but digging into these sources, it's much more. It's complex, it demands proactivity, being adaptable, paying close attention. It's fundamental to creating that positive learning space that Toastmasters is all about. And it directly impacts whether guests stick around or not. And on top of benefiting the club, it's a real opportunity for the person in the role to grow, to pick up genuine leadership skills.
Absolutely. They're a key player on that executive committee team, working towards the club's success, aiming for goals like, distinguished club status. It's a vital role.
So here's something to think about. If this role, which seems like just support on the surface, is actually so vital and such a skill builder, where else might we be overlooking chances for real leadership and growth, in those seemingly small tasks or positions in our own work or lives?